necessarily those of this station, its staff, management, or sponsors.
Are you a family caregiver? Are you caregiving for someone who can no longer take care of themselves? Are you overwhelmed? This is Caregiver Solutions Info with Marcia Teele. Marcia will be hosting an hour of true stories and information, tips and updates of the latest research and necessary information in the caregiving field, focusing on you, the family caregiver. An Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert, Marcia has 15 years of hands-on experience at Arden Courts, a leader in assisted living dementia communities here in the U.S. Marcia covers everything you need to know as a family caregiver, especially if you care for a loved one with Alzheimer's disease or other related dementia or chronic illness. If you have a friend or relative that is also a family caregiver, call them now. They won't want to miss a minute. And let them know they can watch on caregiversolutions.info. And they can listen on WNN 1470 AM in South Florida or nationally on the iHeartRadio app. Now, sit back, relax, and learn from our host, Marcia Teele, as she brings information to you that may just be the caregiving solution you need.
Welcome, everyone. Glad that you're here for the next episode of Caregiver Solutions Info Show. This is going to be a great show today, but I want to make sure that you know, if you're watching, you know the new time slot is now 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time instead of 5 o'clock. So I hope it's not inconvenient for you, and maybe it's even a little better time for you after work and you can relax a little bit and tune into the show. But to make it even more convenient for you, we've added even more ways to tune into the show. So you could be watching us on www.caregiversolutions.info. We are live stream right now out of Boca Raton, Florida. You can also listen to us on the iHeartRadio app. And in addition to our traditional WNN 1470 AM and 95.3 FM in Southeast Florida radio, we have also added two other FM stations. They are 96.9 FM and 103.9 FM. And we are adding a new podcast called ampitup.fm. It's an online radio station, brand new, just starting, ampitup.fm. So we've given you a lot of ways to tune in, to watch the program, to listen to the program whenever you can, wherever you are. So thank you for being here today. This is the Caregiver Solution Info Show, obviously for caregivers. Caregivers come in many different shapes, sizes, and types, and we're going to be talking about a different type of caregiver today in just a moment. But the show is an educational program, and it is for caregivers who have just started their caregiving journey, for those caregivers that are on their caregiving journey, and even those that are at the end of their caregiving journey. Caregiving is a special thing that most people don't prepare for because they don't think they have to, and it's something that usually is thrust on them, and it's a learning process. So this is another way for caregivers to learn, to hear from experts in the field, all different kinds of professionals who come onto the program and lend their expertise, their advice for caregivers. So you'll hear from elder law attorneys, social workers, geriatric care managers, doctors, just about anything that has anything to do with caregiving and to do with dementia. You'll hear about it on this program. So that being said, I'm very excited today to have my guest right here with me in the studio. I have Dr. Connie Siskowski. Hi, Dr. Siskowski.
Hi, Marcia.
Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
I am so glad that you are here. Dr. Siskowski is the founder and the president of a special organization. Now, I just said a minute ago that there's different types of caregivers and sets and subsets of caregivers. And Dr. Siskowski is the founder of the American Association for Caregiving Youth. And we're going to be talking about this special group of people that I know is really special in your heart and special to all of us because they are caregivers. But there's a lot of different things to talk about when you're a young caregiver, but we don't want to say a young caregiver, right? We want to say a caregiving youth because these people are actually children.
They are children. And the ones we work with are in middle and high school. And so they could be as young as 11 years old and shoulder a lot of responsibility on very small shoulders.
Wow. So we haven't talked about the special group of caregivers before. So I think it's real important that people know that caregivers aren't the traditional caregivers that we might think of as an adult or a spouse or an adult child. But there are certain situations where a young child, not an adult, has to step up to the plate. So I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here. So tell me, what does this encompass? What is the American Association for Caregiving Youth? What is it and what do you do?
So I'm going to use our acronym, which is AACY, which is a lot easier than the whole name. And we really have 3 divisions. So one that we started with is called the Caregiving Youth Project, and that provides direct services within Palm Beach County. We have a growing affiliate network because we were the model, the first in the country. And so because of our success, people in other states are wanting to do this work. And then we began the Caregiving Youth Institute. And that has 4 components that spell the word care. Connect kids with each other, advocate, because there is no current legislation that includes this group. Research, again, a scant body of knowledge is available in our country. And educate professionals and you, the public.
Wow, that sounds huge. And I'm so glad that you are doing this work. But I want to get a little bit of background. You are a nurse, you have your PhD. So what has led you up to this point, and why did you start this organization?
So I guess for a lot of years I've been like a problem solver. And so way back years and years and years ago when I was in middle school, we lived with my grandparents, and I took care of my grandfather. And it was at a time when people didn't really recognize trauma in youth or trauma period. And so I was the one who was giving him medicine at 2 o'clock in the morning and found him no longer breathing.
And you were 11 years old?
Well, by that time I was 13.
But still,
But
you were a kid.
I was a kid, and not really prepared because he was my hero, he was my buddy, and now he was no longer there. So that left a big gap in my life. And plus, when you're at that age and you take care of someone of the opposite gender and provide personal care and other things, there's also trauma that can be associated with that. You're not just prepared for that. So it impacted my adult life. And so this work is really about identifying children in this role early and trying to prevent some of the suffering and ramifications that I went through.
Wow. So you have personal experience
I
as
do.
a caregiving youth.
I do.
How horrible that must have been for you to be the one to
Yeah.
find your grandfather not breathing anymore.
Well, and with any caregiver, you go through this thing, you feel guilty, what if I woke up earlier? Would it have made a difference? And I know it wouldn't have, but you still go through that mindset.
Wow. Kids go through a process of growing up and having a childhood, and hopefully it's fun and fancy free, but it sounds like under your circumstances, when you were a young person, you had to be a lot more mature and you grew up a lot faster.
Yeah, that's true. But I did go on to be a nurse, and then I specialized in cardiac nursing because he had heart disease, and you don't put those pieces together until as an adult, and I was in counseling.
Oh, wow. Wow. So that's your personal experience.
Mm-hmm.
And then as your career took off,
Yeah,
what
so-
did you see, and what kind of experience did you have before this?
Yeah, so my career is pretty broad in terms of healthcare. And even I'd started a company called MDTU to bring physician house calls to people. And that was as a direct result of something I had seen in home care where a caregiver, an adult caregiver, was caring for her mom who was bedbound. And she worked and she took off from work, but then her mom wasn't ready to go to the doctors. And so they missed a couple appointments and they didn't have the right transportation. And by the time they got to the doctors, she had had some internal bleeding and needed to be admitted to the hospital. And so I thought, well, technology is so advanced now. And what if we could bring the doctor to the home? And that's also important, I think, for people with memory care issues, because it's hard for families to get them. And then what happens to the employer when, your employee that you're counting on takes off from work? So
that was many years ago that you started that, right?
Yeah. That was like 1995 or so. And then I went for work for a company called Adult Care, and we worked with people that were in long-term care. So that was on a national basis, and I got to learn about family caregiving much more, and heard stories and looked for ways to support them. And so then one day, I was in Washington, D.C., waiting to go into a meeting at the National Council on the Aging, and I looked down, and there's a pamphlet called Faith in Action, and it was a program sponsored or funded by the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. So I met with my minister and said, we really need to do this. And he said, I'm too busy, we can't do this. But he introduced me to other people. And so then we began Boca Raton Interfaith in Action in 1998 to provide volunteers to people who are homebound and caregiving families.
You are a trailblazer, Connie. You really are. I know the kids call you Dr. Connie, and I've known you for probably 19 years going back, and that you have been just so instrumental in setting up all of these programs and making them happen and seeing where there's a need and then just blazing ahead and setting those standards. So then it led you to...
Oh, so then, yeah, I almost forgot. So then I got remarried, now for the fourth time. And my husband was in the pharmaceutical business, so he was doing a lot of traveling, and I had talked about getting my PhD. So he said, why don't you do that? Because being in the pharmaceutical business, sometimes if you have a PhD, you make more money. Well, not the case. But anyhow, so I did the original research with a large group of students. I'd heard about a survey that was being given in Palm Beach County called the What Works Survey. And it was asking kids what helps them learn and what doesn't. And so we included a family health section. And it went to over 12,000 middle and high school kids in the county, 54 schools. And of that, more than 4,000 said they were either missing school, not completing homework, having trouble focusing, or some combination. And so I shared that with people I had come to know nationally. And then the first study was done that showed that there were at least 1.3 million children ages 8 to 18 in our country who were in this role.
Wow. So these kids who took the survey were honest enough to say they were missing school, not getting homework done. And at that point in time, when that data was collected, did you know the reason for it, or did you have to go back and ask them why?
Yeah, well, the survey was de-identified, so we knew the schools. We didn't know the students as part of the research. But it gave us enough material, to know that this is an issue that needs to be addressed. But it was at a time when schools were beginning to get concerned about incompletion or dropout, but they were looking at what's wrong with the schools, what's wrong with the teachers. They weren't looking at the external barriers to children learning. And so after the national study came out, that following March, which was in March of 2006, there was another report that was funded by the Gates Foundation, and it showed that among young adults who had dropped out of school, 22% said it was to care for a family member. So now we had enough pieces together to get funding to begin in 2006 the first caregiving youth project in our country.
Wow. So you're a model for others wanting to do the similar things, and you've done such a great job. It's amazing when you start asking the questions, right? The information that you get back, because if you don't know what the problem is, obviously you can't help, can't fix it.
Right, and it's not like kids go to school and say, hey, guess what I did for grandma this morning?
Right. They don't want to say they had to.
No, they want to be
change
normal. I mean, you remember when you were in middle school.
Yeah.
You you don't want to be different.
Yeah.
And so you kind of wear a mask when you go to school that, everything's okay.
And compartmentalize that. And that's another part of your life that is something that you have to do. But but at least they were able to share the reason, and now the organization exists. So I'm so glad that you did found this, and it keeps growing and growing, and there's a lot more to talk about. But we're going to take our first quick break, and we'll be right back more with Dr. Connie Siskowski and the AACY. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
We're back, and my special guest today is Dr. Connie Siskowski. Dr. Connie, as the kids call you, president and founder of the American Association of Caregiving Youth, and the first one of its kind in the country, and talking about children as caregivers, basically, is what we're talking about. And so you shared with us how you found out kids were missing school and not being able to complete homework. So what other challenges do caregiving youth face because they obviously are missing school and not being able to complete homework? I'm sure all of that has repercussions.
It does. It has, for the younger children, sometimes their brains are not developed fully, their bodies are not developed, so it can have some physical consequences. And so one time, one of the boys had complained about his back hurting. And so we did a home visit, which is part of what we do. We work with the kids in school, out of school, and at home. And we found out that he and his single mom, who was working as a maintenance worker at an assisted living facility, needed to lift his brother in his wheelchair in and out of the house because their stoop was so high and they didn't have a ramp. And so not only was the physical stress of lifting and that burden, but also our student had to be home when his mom got home from work.
In order to help.
In order to help get his brother in the house. And, Florida, luckily, has a lot of nice days, but it also has a lot of rainy days. So you can imagine what this family was going through. So we were able to find somebody who built a ramp. And that made such a difference in his life because it gave him some freedom. His brother was still sick. He still had to help suction him and, do many things. But he really, started to thrive and feel cared about, and his mom could also feel cared about, and that's so important.
Do some of these children have to drop out of school?
Well, that's one thing that we try and prevent, because each time a child drops out of school, they earn about $10,000 less a year annually. And so, thankfully, with the support that we have been able to give, which includes academic support, in-home tutoring, it includes respite. We do activities, like we just had a couple weeks right before Thanksgiving, a camp. We call it Camp Treasure because we believe the kids are treasure, and to help them discover the treasure within. And so first in their school, they learn that they're not alone. And then in activities that we do, they meet kids from other schools. And, this isn't just an issue in Palm Beach County. It's throughout our country. It's throughout our world. And we've even connected them with kids from across the pond.
Who are also caregiving youth.
Young care. Yeah, they call them young carers.
Okay. Now we're talking about, again, ages 8 to 18
Yeah,
is the definition.
but we really begin at 11 in 6th grade.
Okay.
And so we do an eligibility process. Right now we're in 29 schools in Palm Beach County. And so that eligibility process begins in 6th grade. And we ask the kids, if they're caregivers, if they're helping somebody in their home or close by, and the types of activities that they do and how much time that they spend.
So these children can actually be doing simple things like making sure that grandpa doesn't, get up and wander out. Mm-hmm. But it could also include medical, right? And actual physical medicine, doing simple medical procedures, dressing, bathing.
What they do mirrors what an adult family caregiver does. And so we use a weighted index. So those that are providing ADLs or personal care, that has a higher weight in determining their level of responsibility. And so, it's really amazing. We've done a research project with a student from University of Miami Miller School of Medicine who did focus groups on our children who give medications and their need for support. And so that's one of the things that we're working on now. People just don't realize,
such a big responsibility to put on a young person.
It is, but there's two issues. One is that children who are in single-parent homes or with grandparents who are raising them, there may not be anybody else. And then there are children who are in homes where there is an adult caregiver also. Maybe grandma has moved in, but then the adult has to work. And so, before school, sometimes one of our students, his mom went to work early in the morning. So his responsibility was to take care of his great-grandmother before he went to school. And Marcia, you've worked with older people, and sometimes things just take longer. And you know what? The school bus doesn't wait. So here he is.
Grandma's not wanting to eat her oatmeal that morning.
Or take her medicine.
Or takes too long in the bathroom.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so then you can get into a spiral of, you miss school one day, you miss school another day, you worry, what am I missing? Kids make fun of you. They go through a whole bunch of things. So it can be really, really difficult. And sometimes when adults, especially if they're not home, when the children are caregiving, they don't realize the impact on them.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
And that's the second thing.
Yeah, it has to affect them. Obviously, you mentioned physical impact because hurting his back, the young boy trying to lift his brother out of the wheelchair. But I'm hearing you say all of these things that these kids are doing as caregivers. It has to affect them emotionally, socially. Tell me about that.
Yeah, it does. So, statistically, there's more anxiety and depression. So they are affected emotionally. I always worry about the children who are in single-parent homes or with grandparents who are raising them, because they've already been through one trauma, and always in the back of their heads, they're thinking about, what's going to happen to me if something happens to grandma. And our government, in its wisdom, had included grandparents raising grandchildren as part of the National Family Caregiver Support Program, but they didn't really think about what happens if the grandparent gets sick. Where is the support for the child then?
Yeah, that can be pretty scary because, like you said, they've already lost one or two parents, and that's the reason the grandparents have to step
in. Or because with the opioid crisis, we have more grandparents stepping up to the plate. And that's also really a challenge for the kids emotionally. So, and often they can't participate in after-school activities because they have to get right home to fulfill their caregiving responsibilities.
So they're missing out on their social life.
Yeah, they
right?
are. And
can't play with their kids, can't go outside and play kickball like we all used to do.
Right. You can't have friends over, particularly if somebody acts out. And we're seeing more and more sibling caregivers where there might be a child as a sibling on the autism spectrum. And we've even heard that some families don't want their children visiting because somebody might catch something, or they don't want them exposed to somebody who's older. So it's
or something that could be scary, or they don't understand.
Exactly.
It's just a matter of, like you mentioned before, of educating everyone. But how does society step up to the plate? What does society say? Because you don't hear a lot about caregiving youth. At least I don't.
Well, nobody does, really. And so, because, what they do is behind closed doors. You think about adults caring for children, not children caring for adults.
Right.
So that's one thing, and we're seeing more and more grandparent care. And so these kids have not been yet acknowledged within our government. So we're working to change that. And thankfully, now we have some legislation pending to provide support and to be able to expand our program in Florida. Our high school graduation rate is 98%.
Oh,
that's an average over the past 5 years, which is higher than all of Palm Beach County. And the majority of kids that we work with are financially insecure and minorities. And if you took that segment out of the general population of graduation, we're probably about 20% higher.
Because of the support that you lend.
Because of the support. And we haven't proven it yet, Marcia, but how I would bet my money, not that I have very much, but that our work has prevented some of the ramifications that are seen in adult family caregivers.
I just can't imagine, the stress and of this responsibility on a younger person, like sixth grade up to through high school, and all the things that affect them negatively that we've been talking about. Is there any positive that can come out of this?
There's lots of positive things. Like, you have a special relationship when you are a caregiver with that person that you care for that no one else has. And so that's something that you learn from and you cherish. And it might be frustrating at times, but still it's something that's priceless, right?
Yes.
And for the kids, they also learn skills that their peers don't have. And I always remember one boy who actually is in graduate school at Stanford right now. And he said, when I graduated, I realized how many more life skills I had than my peers and how much more I know to be self-sufficient.
And things that he could take with him moving forward and maybe give him a little step forward with maybe what he either wants to do with his life or doesn't want to do with his life. Because in your case, look at you as a caregiving youth, and you took it all the way through and became a nurse because you cared for your grandfather. So,
and there's also, an opportunity to look at your value system. Because if you have a friend, who's calling your brother a crip or something like that, then is that a person that you want to be a friend? And then can you take those kinds of things and translate it into your adult life?
And maybe turn things around and make things on a positive rather than a negative after seeing how people perceive
Right.
a lot of it is about perception, obviously, too.
Well, and sometimes, the death of a care receiver does happen. And so we work with the students through that time and recognize the importance of losing purpose. Because, as older people, we talk about, the purpose-driven life. And so the kids lose that purpose. So we need to address that to say what's gonna fill that space.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Well, we have to take a break, but we'll be right back after this commercial. And don't go away, because we're going to be giving a book away in just a moment, and you'll want to stick with us for that one. We'll be right back.
Arden Courts is not just a place to live, it's a place to call home. Residential living combined with quality caregiving. This is the philosophy behind Arden Courts. Communities created exclusively for individuals with Alzheimer's disease and related dementia who would benefit from a safe and structured environment. For additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides, call 888-478-2410 to locate a community nearest you. Inquire about our educational seminars, resource library, or support groups, or simply feel free to ask questions you may have about Alzheimer's and related dementias. At Arden Courts, we know, we understand, and we can help because memory care is all we do. Remember, call 888-478-2410 for additional information about any of the unique services Arden Courts provides. You are listening to your host, Marcia Teele, an Alzheimer's disease and dementia care expert on CareGiverSolutions.info. If you have a question or wish to share a story, call into the show at 888-565-1470 and talk with Marcia. Now, back to Caregiver Solutions.
I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our national sponsor, Arden Courts Memory Care Community. Arden Courts has about 50 communities throughout the United States, 10 Arden Courts right here in Florida. And Arden Courts is a leader when it comes to memory care and helping people not only have a better quality of life, but also their caregivers to have a better quality of life. And they would like to offer you lots of resources. Not only do they provide support groups and other educational material, this is a free book for you, the family caregiver, just for tuning in to this show. This is called The 36-Hour Day, written by Dr. Peter Rabins and Nancy Mace, and it's in its 6th edition, which means it's always being updated, and it's a very, very popular book, one of the first of its kind, actually, on caregiving with dementia as the focus. So this book can be yours. All you have to do is call the toll-free number of Arden Courts, which is 888-478-2410. Tell them you heard about this free book offer on the Caregiver Solution Info Show. They'll get your name and address and make sure that they mail a book right to you. So I highly recommend this book. If you don't have it, if you're a caregiver or you know a caregiver who hasn't had an opportunity to have this book and read it or refer to it, it would be a great gift for them. So give us a call, 888-478-2410, and get your free copy of the 36-Hour Day book. My guest today is Dr. Connie Siskowski. She is the founder and president of the American Association of Caregiving Youth. And I'm so glad to have you here, Dr. Connie. We're talking about caregivers that are young. And the organization that you founded works with children from about 11 to 18 that are taking care of either a close relative or a close friend when they need to be there because there's nobody else to do it. And so there are a lot of issues and obviously problems, with all of this. And I thank you so much for taking on this challenge. And speaking of challenges, as an organization, you're providing all of these services and support to help the children in this situation. What are some of your challenges as an organization that you face trying to do what you do?
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges is raising awareness. And so I'm very thankful, Marcia, to have this opportunity. Because when people hear the name or they hear caregiving youth, what is that? They don't understand what we do, and or the breadth of the situation. And so, as a nonprofit, without any government support for this population, we have to do our own fundraising as well as, provide the services. So in Palm Beach County, we would like to be in at least every Title I school, in every middle and high school, to identify and serve the kids.
So
And
are you funded by private donations then?
we are funded by private donations. We have grants. We have funding through United Way, the town of Palm Beach United Way, and we have 2 small county grants. So little by little, but there's just so much more to do. And even in Florida, 19% of the 67 counties have a high school graduation rate less than 80%. And so, that affects not only the individual, but the economy and society. And so we're looking for ways to use technology to reach that and to get funding from the state in order to be able to accomplish that and develop another model where we can educate educators. This is nothing that's been taught in nursing school. It's just starting to be on the horizon of pediatricians.
Which is kind of like mind-boggling to me that a doctor or pediatrician could not identify more the symptoms in a child coming in to see them and find out what the family situation is like that might be causing this, because I don't think they really try to look for that.
You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And so if they haven't been exposed to it, how can they know to look? And so a child, may have somatic complaints because of the stress.
Right.
But, how many people really look at that root cause and try and find that solution rather than a Band-Aid?
Wow. Yeah. So you're out there in the community now, not only educating the youth about what they're doing and how you can help them and educate them and make their life a little bit easier. You want to get out to the doctors and the pediatricians so that they can intervene as much as they can too.
Right, and identify the kids early, so that you can prevent the ramifications that many adult family caregivers suffer from. So, and a lot of times, what's so frustrating is like you go to somebody's home and like the boy I described, they've been discharged from a rehab facility or a hospital, and the things aren't there in the home that can help them. Maybe they don't have grab bars, so the child has to help them get off the toilet. There's no ramp. Things like that.
And sometimes families don't even think to ask for those things or
Right.
don't think that they could get those things. And
Right.
so your organization intervenes and support.
And we try and find ways. So I'll give you another example. I mean, you think you've seen everything, and then there's one more thing.
Right.
We found a grandmother who had a stroke on a mattress on the floor. So we work with many collaborative partners to help, give them a bed. We were doing one home visit, and the mom who has cancer, a single mom, was talking about how her daughter needed to move her mattress into the living room at night because the noise of the rats was so loud. And so we were able to get some funding, because that's not in our budget, obviously, to have a critter control go in. And then they said, well, we can solve this inside problem, but it's going to come up again. And what you really need to do is build a rat wall. Well, I never heard of a rat wall.
Rat wall?
A rat wall. So we got the additional funding and built a barrier. They built a barrier wall around this manufactured home and the air conditioner, so the rats couldn't come in from underneath. So we always look to try and find a solution. And it worked.
Wow.
So that
you never
takes,
know what your job's going to entail,
yeah,
right?
and so that takes the stress off of everyone.
A lot of stress, caregiving youth. So your challenges sound like a lot of organizations. Obviously, it's monetary, trying to get the funding. Do you have other barriers? Do you think people aren't as involved as you'd like them to be, or as accepting or understanding? So how do you deal with that?
I wish as an organization we had more bandwidth, more capacity, but we've had limitations related to resources. And so we just, do what we can as we can and grow strategically so that we can meet the needs of more kids. We have developed a skills building curriculum, which is given in the schools. And so it goes into life skills. And, we help kids get scholarships. We had a college knowledge day because it's not, they have a life beyond caregiving and they need to know that.
That's a good point. Can volunteers help you? Do you use volunteers?
We can use so many volunteers. We have an amazing group of volunteers. We also have an active mentor program that we call MACY, Mentor Caregiving Youth. And so there's an education time, and then there's only a 4-hour a month commitment. And so a person is matched with a youth caregiver, and it can make such a difference. We just got an email from this one gentleman who's been with a boy for, I don't know, I guess 3 years now, and he just got accepted into college. And he got A's and B's, and before that he was failing because this mentor has made such a difference in his life. Yeah. One of the older men whose daughter, he wanted a mentor for his daughter because he was ill, his wife had died, and he didn't know how to take her to get a bra. Some of those simple things, that having that relationship with a caring adult who's trusted, who's been background checked, who's been educated, who treats with confidentiality the issues that they confront.
Wow, so you certainly welcome volunteers.
We welcome volunteers, and another big need is drivers. So anybody who's been a mom and done a carpool, because the kids otherwise can't get to an activity. So either our staff, our team, or volunteers help. And, that's just an amazing way to serve. We also have a few volunteers who come into the office, and we're getting ready for our big holiday celebration on December 22nd.
This is for all the caregiving youth.
This is for the caregiving youth. Of course, we have to limit our participation because we can't accommodate 500 and something kids. So we have 2 seatings, and then for families that can't come, we try and take gifts to them afterwards.
Very
we
nice.
have a big holiday shop where the kids can shop for their family members, and shop at no cost for them. And then we have volunteers who help wrap, and they get a personal shopper to help them pick out what they would like. We have music, a DJ. We have volunteers that do family portraits.
Wow.
And, it's amazing then to go into somebody's home and you see this portrait on the wall. And sometimes it's the only time a family picture is taken. Things that we take for granted. We did an activity at the beach. Somebody said, I've lived here 5 years and I've never been to the beach.
Wow.
Again, it's sometimes the little things that really make such a difference.
So the caregiving youth that we're talking about, they face a lot of similar challenges that adult caregivers face, but I think the impact to them might even be worse because of the fact that of their age, because they are young and they're not mature and they haven't had a lot of these life experiences.
Right.
But they still do the same type of caregiving tasks.
Exactly. And they don't have the experience base. So that's why, just as adult family caregivers who attend a support group, and learn from each other, it's refreshing to know that you're not alone with what you're feeling, and to learn from each other, and to try and work on preventing some of the ramifications.
Wow, this is incredible that, opening up our eyes to more than adult caregivers, realizing that there are caregivers that are young and helping a lot with parents and grandparents. I like what you said about the shop, that they can pick out gifts for at no charge for their parents, because obviously they're not being paid to be a
Right.
caregiver. They're still in school. They don't have jobs, so their job is being a caregiver.
Right.
Where do these gifts come from?
Well, we collect the gifts from various people, from religious congregations, from other organizations, and so
As long
we
as
call
they're-
them regiftables. We look for-
Regift. I
yeah.
like that. I like regiftables,
Yeah, so it's
actually.
like something that somebody has given to you. It's really nice, but it's just not you.
Right.
And you haven't used it, so why not share it and let somebody else enjoy it?
I love that. And these are kids who, can go and pick something that they think would be perfect for their
Right.
loved one, and it comes from their heart. And someone else has donated it from their heart
Exactly,
to them,
yeah.
and I think it just
Right.
it all works together and make
Yeah.
everybody feel good. So, are you still looking for regiftables for your holiday
We
party?
are definitely still looking for regiftables. And, the more we have, like a lot of times the kids come from families where there's multiple family members. So how many gifts we have makes it, how many then
Get
have,
to
how
pick
many
out,
they
yeah.
get to pick out.
Oh. So if someone had regiftables they'd like to donate, you're located here in Boca Raton.
We're in Boca Raton.
Okay, do you want to give the address? Can they just
sure,
drop things off to you?
Yeah, it's 6401 Congress Avenue, Suite 200 in Boca. It's on the west side of Congress, just between Yamato and Clintmore.
Easy to get to.
Easy to
And
get to.
what
and
phone
good
number if
parking.
they wanted to call first?
So if they wanted to call the office directly, it's 561-391-7401.
Okay, and there's an 800 number, 800-508-9618.
Yes.
800 number if you want to
Right.
call or say.
And that's person answered 24/7.
Is it?
Yeah. And so that's donated through Call for Health. And so then they'll take the information and make sure that we get the caller's request.
That's awesome. So this is good, guys. It's holiday time, gift giving time. If you want to help out caregiving youth, make a donation, either a monetary donation, I'm sure would be welcome, or
Absolutely.
a regifting of something that's nice that you have that you don't want or need that somebody else could use, and shoot it down to the office in Boca Raton. I'm sure that they'll put it to really good use.
Absolutely.
That's awesome. A couple more questions before we have to end our show today. Who's going to do this when you're not around anymore? You've been doing it for over 20-some years and getting involved. What's going to happen?
I'm not ready to retire yet,
Okay, well,
Marcia.
but
we do have a succession plan in place.
Okay, good.
And, as soon as we can afford it, we'll look for somebody who can take my place. And it might be, because our organization is kind of complex, it might be more than one person. We'll have to see.
I'm not pushing you out
Yeah,
by no
no,
means, but
yeah.
I'm looking
It's
for
true.
the future, what you see for the next 10, 15, 20 years, where we're going to be with this, and
Right.
what we think that we can accomplish. Same thing with adult caregivers. You
Yeah.
know, it's hard because I always say there's a new caregiver born every day, because of all the people that are newly diagnosed and now they have a caregiver, and they're going through the journey, as I call it,
Right.
right? Same thing with the adults is the same thing as with the youth, right? There's
Exactly.
a new one all the
And
time.
so one thing that we have done is made a request to Governor DeSantis to create a task force on family caregiving and to include caregivers of all ages. Several states have such a task force, and I think it would really be healthy for Florida and Florida's already a leader in supporting caregiving youth, but it needs to be a leader in including them in supporting all family caregivers.
That would be awesome. if that happened, because, like you
Well,
said,
the more people that write to Governor DeSantis, the better.
Yes.
Voices have to be heard. The children's voice has to be heard.
it is so heartwarming for you to come and share all of this with us. Open our eyes, will open our hearts, to all caregivers, right? I mean, it is, I've seen too, where working with the dementia specific, but there's caregivers of for all reasons, not just mental, issues, cognitive issues. Lots of caregivers, the physical, the mental, the children that they're with their brothers and sisters that have, different disabilities. I mean,
Right.
it runs the
and
gamut.
for families that don't speak English, it puts another burden. Thankfully, in our office, we have 2 people that speak Spanish and 2 people that speak Creole. So, because it's so important to be able to communicate with the families too. And, for families that don't have resources, they don't have the funds to hire help at home. And so that's another reason that the kids wind up caregiving.
Yeah, I like your story about the volunteer who was mentoring the boy that got accepted into college. What other special story, success story, do you like to share that might come to mind? That how you've helped somebody achieve, their goals, or how you helped the family. I guess there's probably too many to mention, right?
Yeah, there's really a lot, but I think one of the most rewarding things is after the kid, we work with the kids until they graduate, and so more than 90% go on to post-secondary education, and many want to go into healthcare, and so it's really fun to hear back. Like I was in, I had been at an event or something in town center in the mall, and all of a sudden I hear Dr. Connie, and it was one of our kids. And he recognized me. I didn't recognize him because now he's finishing college. And so to see these kids go on and thrive and be productive adults, that's what we really want, for them, for their families, and for society.
Yeah, that would be very, very rewarding. And I hear that there's a book somewhere talks about caregiving
So
youth.
we were trying to get our skills building curriculum published. So I talked to somebody in New York, and they were really interested, not in that, but in doing a book. And I said, well, I don't really have time to write a book. And so about a year later, I get a call from this woman in Texas, and she said she was writing a book about caregiving youth. And so she wondered if she could use some of our stories and if she could interview me. And I said, well, who are you doing this for? And so anyhow, I did a lot of editing on the book and then had the opportunity to write the foreword. And it's called I'm a Teen Caregiver, Now What? So it has different vignettes, and it's available on Amazon. There's a link on our website at aacy.org.
That's awesome. So the book is talks about the challenges of a teen caregiver. Mm-hmm. So go to Amazon. That's a book that could help a caregiving youth to maybe identify and validate what they're going through.
And to know that they're not alone.
Yeah.
I mean, knowing that you're not alone is just one of the
that's the best
things.
That's the best.
So
we all need somebody.
Yeah.
And I want to thank you for being here today so much.
Marcia. It's wonderful to see you again after all these years.
It's great to see you. Thanks for sharing all about caregiving youth. Thank you all for tuning in today. If you want more information, you can go to the website, which is
aacy.org.
Real easy.
We're also on Instagram, on Facebook. Follow us, contribute, help us grow. We have more kids to serve, and you can help.
That's right. We can all help. So call them anytime, get more information. In the meantime, we'll be back next week, same time at 6 o'clock. Remember, not 5 o'clock anymore, 6 o'clock p.m. More with caregiversolutions.info. The show is growing. We're getting out more information all the time, growing on many, many channels now. So I want to wish you happy holidays, and we'll see you guys next week, hopefully, and tell people about us. And don't forget, in the meantime, give someone a hug because they need it, and so do you. Take care. We'll see you then.
Thanks for joining us for this week's Caregiver Solutions with Marcia Teele. Join us next week as Marcia, who has 15 years of Alzheimer's disease and dementia care experience, brings you more needed information to help with the care of your loved one. This show can be seen again on caregiversolutions.info, and questions can be left on the site, which may be used on the program to help others. See you next week for more Caregiver Solutions.